Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with our foundational verse. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord, for he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Important verse, right, Dad?
Absolutely. And especially now when we're looking at who's going to be running the government, all that kind of thing. And it's like, well, first of all, it's God. And if you're going to elect a leader that doesn't know anything about God or doesn't know how to submit to God, you're not going to go through smooth waters for the next while until my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's why that verse is so important. We have got to put God first. When we put God first, we're going to live in freedom and truth. When we don't put God first, we're going to live in tyranny and lies and all kinds of stuff. And this program is going to prove that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring on our guest. We're excited to have him back, Mr. Shawn Buckley. Welcome back, Shawn.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. We've done part 1, part 2, part 3 of Del Bigtree's testimony at the NCI, National Citizens Inquiry in Edmonton. Incredible. He's been my favorite of all favorites, all time. Put him to the top of the list because how he explains what's going on is absolutely amazing. I'm going to go ahead and let you tee up. We're going to watch part 4 today, right?
Yeah, and actually, when you say it's amazing, it truly is amazing. So, your viewers need to go and look at parts 1, 2, and 3 because your life's going to be changed. Mr. Bigtree, he basically was involved in mainstream media and came across evidence that the CDC was hiding data on vaccine safety and the network wouldn't do anything. So he stepped out on his own and produced the documentary Vaxxed, and then he started the Highwire, and the Informed Consent Action Network, which is responsible for getting us the Pfizer documents and all of that. He's just been a champion. But I think this presentation he did at the NCI is the best one ever. I've seen him present live. I've seen him present online, but this is powerful testimony. It's life-changing.
If you haven't seen part 1, 2, and 3, you have to go back and watch it. This is the most passionate, easily explained presentation I've ever seen you guys do at the NCI. I can't imagine what it was like being in that room, but I do know he got a standing ovation at the end. Here's part 4. Watch this.
I want to point out another person. This is Catherine Edwards, who's another co-author on the same Plotkin on Vaccines, the Bible on Vaccines. She was brought in another case to state that none of the vaccines a child, the case was that the pediatrician gave this child a vaccine when he had a fever he should not have and ended up having autism. This is a very important case, by the way, because it's a part of the omnibus proceeding. Let me just take a second to talk about this. When we took away liability in 1986, suddenly, by the early 2000s, there was about 5,000 cases of autism in the pseudo-vaccine court they created. Remember, you can't sue the manufacturer. Now you're suing the government. It was supposed to be a no-fault court that recognized vaccines cause injuries, they cause problems. So for those children that have this issue, they're taking one for the team, we'll hand you enough money to take care of them the rest of their lives, and we won't make a big deal out of it. So the court doesn't have a jury, it doesn't even have a judge, it has a special master, no media is allowed in there, and there's no precedence allowed. You're not allowed to say a case just like mine got settled for the same reason. You have to present all of your own science. I want you to think about this. In this case, you are suing the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And you were supposed to bring the science to prove that the injury your child has gone through was caused by the vaccine. So you need science that proves that. The person or the group that was supposed to have done this science for you so to be admissible in court is sitting across from you. They're the ones being sued. Our vaccine court is essentially like a murder trial where the murderer is the one doing all of your forensics. That is a problem. It's a massive conflict of interest. So they had 5,000 cases of autism, and so they decided this is going to cost us a fortune. At that point, every case of autism was paying out $3 million apiece in vaccine court. For the rest of their lives, they were going to be handicapped. The families would have massive expenses, eventually have to put them in schools and boarding situations as they got older. 3 million times 5,000, and that was just the people that knew that that court even existed. So they said, let's try 5 of the cases and then determine the fate of the 5,000. The first case was Michelle Cedillo. The case came in. They brought in the state's leading witness, Dr. Andrew Zimmerman. Dr. Andrew Zimmerman stated, there's no mechanism by which a vaccine causes autism. I'm the world's leading authority on this issue, and the case lost. Number 2 was what this case ended up being about was, Number 2 was Hannah Poling. Hannah Poling came on board. They had the case, but one problem, Hannah Poling's father was a neurologist. He ended up witnessing the regression of his daughter right after vaccination. And as it turned out, his colleague in the same hospital, God, I think, has a sense of humor, was Dr. Andrew Zimmerman. And John Poling went to Andrew Zimmerman and said, I want you to study my daughter. I never would have believed this either. You need to take a look at her. She's regressing into autism right after vaccination. Andrew Zimmerman, in her case, finally discovered what the cause was. He went to the Department of Justice that was defending Health and Human Services and said, I have discovered the mechanism. It's an underlying mitochondrial disorder that Hannah Poling has. The cells of her body are not able to produce enough energy to stop the inflammation that then goes to her brain. She suffered an encephalitis event, and the resulting symptom is autism. This case was caused by vaccinations. He never ended up in court. The Department of Justice fired him immediately and went on to pull the case aside, settled it for our understanding is tens of millions of dollars, silenced the family from ever talking about it, and hid it from the public. So the third case was what this case was, which was around Yates Hazelhurst. Yates Hazelhurst had the same underlying mitochondrial disorder, all of it. At the end of his case, Dr. Andrew Zimmerman no longer worked there, but the Department of Justice, the United States government, said in their final closing arguments, Dr. Andrew Zimmerman could not be here, but he is a leading authority on autism, and he has stated unequivocally that there's no mechanism by which a vaccine can cause autism. Not only had they fired him, they stuck with his original statement and never corrected it and used it to win the subsequent cases. We filed an affidavit on behalf of Dr. Andrew Zimmerman just a few years ago, but the Department of Justice has done nothing about it. So just a few years later, 20 years later, they brought the case back to a real court. This is Catherine Edwards, who is claiming that no vaccine can cause autism. I know because I co-wrote Plotkin's Bible on vaccines. This is what happens on under oath.
You have done most of the pivotal trials relied upon to license many of the vaccines, correct, on the market?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're highly experienced at conducting clinical trials, correct?
I'm highly experienced conducting clinical trials.
Okay. And you're familiar with many of the clinical trials that relied upon to license many of the vaccines currently on the market, correct?
I am.
Okay. In your opinion, did the clinical trials relied upon to license the vaccines that Yates received, many of which are still on the market today, were they designed to rule out that the vaccine causes autism?
No. You've badgered me into answering the question the way you want me to, but I think that that's probably the answer.
Is that your accurate and truthful testimony?
Yes.
In the expert disclosures for this case, it asserts that, among other things, you will testify that, quote, the issue of whether vaccines cause autism has been thoroughly researched and rejected, end quote. It's your testimony that MMR vaccine cannot cause autism.
That's correct.
It's your testimony that Hep B vaccine cannot cause autism.
That's correct.
It's your testimony that iPol cannot cause autism.
Yes.
It's your testimony that HIV vaccine cannot cause autism.
Yes.
It's your testimony that varicella vaccine cannot cause autism.
Yes.
It's your testimony that Prevnar vaccine cannot cause autism.
Yes.
And it's your testimony that DTaP vaccine cannot cause autism.
Yes.
And you have a study that supports that DTaP doesn't cause autism?
I do not have a study that DTaP causes autism. So I don't have either.
Do you have any study one way or another of whether iPol causes autism?
No, I do not, sir.
Do you have any study one way or another of whether NGRX B causes autism?
I do not have any evidence that it causes autism, nor that it does not.
And what about HIV titers vaccine? Any evidence one way or another whether it causes autism?
No.
And what about Prevnar vaccine? Any evidence one way or another?
No, sir. No, sir.
And how about varicella vaccine? Let me just finish. Are there any studies one way or another that support whether it does or doesn't cause autism?
Part of MMR, but not as varicella by itself. No, sir. No studies that say it does, or no studies that say it doesn't.
Right. There have been studies that have found an association between hepatitis B vaccine and autism, correct?
Not studies that I feel are credible.
Okay. Which study are you referring to when you say that?
Well, why don't you show me the study, and then I'll see whether I agree with it.
I mean, I think right there I can rest the case. We are hearing there's mountains of evidence. There are confirmation hearings in America for the head of FDA, head of CDC, head of NIH that are going on, where Senator Cassidy and Bernie Sanders are saying there's mountains of evidence. Admit right now that you will adhere to the mountains of evidence that show that vaccines don't cause autism. Yet, when you put the two greatest authorities in the world on the subject that are showing up to a courtroom with all the evidence that exists to stand in a courtroom to prove that vaccines do not cause autism, and they cannot provide one single study.
Mr. Bigtree, can we go a little deeper into what you're saying? Because I think the whole world is riveted. They were watching Mr. Kennedy's confirmation, and they're watching, Dr. Bhattacharya and the other. And we're seeing this. So, for example, that Mr. Kennedy pointed out a conflict of interest with pharma funding. Do you think that Mr. Kennedy and the Trump administration are going to succeed in getting this type of information out? I mean, you're approaching this as a journalist, and you're showing us government evidence. You're showing us video of testimony under oath. Do you think that we're going to get that narrative changed?
I believe so. I think it's the #1 goal of both President Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but what you will see is full transparency. For instance, one of the things that we've always asked is just why don't you do a comparative study. We have databases like the Vaccine Safety Data Link inside of the CDC. It has over 10 million people in it. The Institute of Medicine studied that database to do a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, which is all that anyone in the medical freedom movement has really ever been asking for. Since you've skipped the safety studies, which Stanley Plotkin just admitted, and when you hear that there's no study that says yes or no, you recognize that it's how the game is played. So you've been hearing there's no causation. I mean, well, that's correlation, not causation. They skipped the only study that takes you out of correlation to causation. I didn't even understand this. As I kept hearing it, oh, well, it's not causation. There's no way to determine causation once you've skipped the double-blind placebo trial. That's where causation is determined. You have to have a safety baseline established by a placebo group and then prove that the issue happened more often in the drug group. Once you skip that trial, the rest of their lives, no matter how many people line up saying, I got cancer from the COVID vaccine or I got autism after the vaccination, they will say, well, that's correlation, not causation, and you'll never get past it because they skipped the only trial where they can achieve that. But we can do a retrospective study of the vaccine safety data link. And we can do a retrospective study of every database in Canada, in Switzerland, in England, in Africa, all around the world. We are the home of Apple in America, of Microsoft. We are now moving into the age of AI and computer learning. Clearly, very easily, we can now run studies and say, take a look at the more than 10,000 unvaccinated individuals in the vaccine safety database and compare the health outcomes to those that are fully vaccinated and just ask simple questions. Who has more diabetes? Who has more autism? Who has more Tourette's, lupus, ADD, ADHD, childhood leukemia, all of the things that are skyrocketing since the 1980s. Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to make sure those studies get done. And even if they don't, what I believe he will do in his effort for radical transparency is make those databases public. Give them public access, anonymize them so that they are HIPAA compliant, and let every scientist in the world that wants to do that study do that study. And let's have this conversation begin. There's no way you're going to hold back this dam because, as I've pointed out, and as Robert Kennedy Jr. will now use the regulatory agencies of the United States of America to show, you will find nowhere in this database the mountain of evidence against the connection between vaccine and autism that you've been told exists. Try to find it. It's not here. Senator Cassidy, I don't know what you're talking about.
And it's just, Mr. Bigtree, you're on the inside and the world's kind of watching. So you're confident that there is will to pursue this.
I am.
And you're confident it's going to happen.
I actually believe there's a lot of scientists inside of these regulatory agencies. These are not all evil people. Many of them, look at what happened with the coronavirus vaccine. We have seen more studies that are pouring through the door than we ever saw in any other vaccine. It's not because the other vaccines didn't have issues. In fact, there have been more studies on the COVID vaccine done worldwide than clearly autism, which is the most interesting subject to scientists around the world, except what we've been dealing with was Tony Fauci was delivering hundreds of billions of dollars from NIAID to every university essentially in the world that mattered. And here's how that works. If you're getting $1 million grant or $10 million grant, as soon as some scientist inside of your university decides to do some form of a vax versus unvax study or a look at the safety of a vaccine, Tony Fauci would give them a call and say, boy, you have a really nice grant we've been giving you every single year. I'd hate to see that go away. I don't know how your university would work without it. And, well, what are you getting to? Well, we just think you're wasting time on that study on vaccines. There's been plenty of evidence to show that they're safe. We think you're wasting our money at that university. If you don't stop it, we're going to stop the grants. And that's how Tony Fauci has been controlling the science around all these issues across the world. But COVID was too big. And people lost so much faith in Tony Fauci, and it was clear that he had his back against the wall. And once you finally allowed the floodgates to open, now all of the scientists that are allowed to do what they were here to do, which was try to save humanity in Japan, in England, in Ireland, in Sweden, in America, in Canada, all over the world, are now doing studies on the COVID vaccine. Once the HHS secretary says it's open season, do every study you want on autism and the vaccines. There will be no stopping it. It won't matter not just in America, around the world, we are fascinated by this issue. And we've been blocked by a lying mainstream media that was incapable of winning the last election, even though they had a 24-hour news cycle telling us that the worst humans in the world were President Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. They failed. And so now they don't have the power to manipulate this conversation any longer.
You're an expert on the media, and likely we wouldn't be able to find anyone else that the media has demonized as much as you on the issue of just let's look at the real science on vaccination. What's your thoughts on what's happening with the media? Because, in Canada, we turn on the TV and we're still totally in the matrix. And what advice can you give for perhaps us disarming the media?
I mean, like anything else, you have to turn it off. I mean, I think it's time for probably a remake of the film Network. We should all scream we're mad as hell and toss our televisions out the window. I think you have a real problem. I think one of the biggest issues in America and around the world is the television set. If I could wave one wand and make one change in the world that I would think would be the most impactful, it would have nothing to do with science. It would be the total destruction of the media system that is now straight up propaganda working for the pharmaceutical industry, who's essentially embedded with our government agencies and health agencies. We are not getting news anymore. Instead, we'll be manipulated, and we expect that to continue. We expect we're going to be in a battle with a false narrative coming from legacy media. I did a press conference really going at and telling legacy media that I would be watching them right after the confirmation of Robert Kennedy Jr. But we do have new media happening, and luckily in America at least, the censorship that was going to take place on the internet is at least being stalled by President Trump. So we dodged a bullet. We saved our First Amendment right to free speech in this election. We were gravely concerned had Kamala Harris been elected or Joe Biden. They were both promising to censor misinformation, even though our congressional investigation into the COVID pandemic, a 500-page document, now proves that the misinformation was coming from our government, the Canadian government, every government. The 5-foot social distancing rule, Tony Fauci admitted in front of Congress, was just made up, had no basis in science. The mask mandate had no science. There's still no science that shows that a mask can stop transmission of a virus like coronavirus or the flu. We now know that it was inaccurate to state that the vaccine was 95% effective at stopping infection or transmission. I have some science, if we get to it, showing the opposite. And so the misinformation was coming from our government agencies. And now we at least won't have a misinformed government with their hand on our free speach.
Are you hearing this? Can we? This is, Shawn, I'm going to throw it to you. This is amazing.
Well, I think his final point was the most important. Like, you have to turn off the TV. How much can you be lied to and still actually listen to these people and not understand that it's pure propaganda and the games they play? I mean, here we have this vaccine court, and they're going to try 5 test cases. And so they use this big expert, Zimmerman, to say, no, there's no link with the vaccines and autism. So the first case loses. And then the second case, he actually has personal experience with, because a fellow neuroscientist, it was his child. And he discovers the link between vaccines and autism. He's got the mechanism. So the second case settles. They're not going to run that. But then, and here's the deception. So for the third and other cases, they're still using Zimmerman as an expert. They're not calling him personally. They're saying, well, let's refer to his evidence at the first trial, where he said there's no mechanism, but they know he has since concluded and found the mechanism. What type of fraud is that? And the big fraud, we're told by the media, we're told, he references Senator Kennedy's, hearings to become head of HHS. Well, they're ramming down our throats. There's no link between vaccines and autism. There's no link. But they didn't do the trials, the double-blind clinical trials that would show causation. And then they have the audacity to say, well, because, we didn't do what needed to be done to show causation, so there's no causation. Like, I don't know how long people continue to watch TV.
Well, I think it's hilarious. And I know it gets Dad's feathers really ruffled. The people email us or comment to us, you guys, you're not scientific at all. Your show's not scientific. I'm not scientific. The scientists are not scientific. They don't have any science to back up what they're saying. You know what I mean? They have zero. There is the horse's mouth saying we don't have the science to prove or disprove anything. There you go. Alan, I'm going to let you take it. Go. Sorry. A little bit of a rant. I'm just.
It's okay.
You're lucky.
It
Jesus
is hard.
loves you. Sorry, go ahead.
It is hard to watch sometimes because, these people have to get. You could tell this lady was very, very uncomfortable. You could tell that she was being asked questions that I was thinking she was going to slam down the computer and cut the thing off and just walk out of the room. I mean, I couldn't believe that she was willing to go through the bitter end of this interview, but it was torture on her because she knows the facts. And the facts is that the vaccine was never tested, never safe and effective, no proof of that whatsoever. Unbelievable. I mean, what can you say?
What I don't understand is, I get commercial interests and I get grants and all of that, but we're talking about there is an autism epidemic, and that's just one, neurosymptom caused by this swelling of the brain. We're talking about killing and damaging children, and yet we can't have an honest discussion. Like I don't know how to process that.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't know how to process it either because we had a health committee with, Dr. Gary, and Dr. Gary here. Their first recommendation was stop vaccinating children. Well, then the argument would keep, well, it's not mandated anymore. I know, but it's dangerous for children. And it's the same thing that kids can't drink alcohol until they're 21 or whatever the age is. You've got to put some guidelines here because we're destroying our kids.
Yeah. Well, the best thing is part 5 is coming up tomorrow. It is amazing. You've got to watch tomorrow's show. It's absolutely amazing. Shawn, we got to go, but thank you so much for being here. We're going to see you back tomorrow.
Thanks for having me.
Dad, let's quickly give away our free booklet. We're giving away The Living Stone, A Journey of Transformation by Alan Huntsberger. You can get it toll free by calling 1-800-915-0056 or go to our website, gotalktruth.com, and click on resources. Great booklet. You must get it. It's going to increase your relationship with Jesus Christ. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to be so helpful. You're going to thank us for it. Trust me, I know you will. If you want to help support our mission, keep this truth across our nation, because we are not government funded. We are only supported by you. You guys are the ones that are making this happen and helping us move the needle. You can support us by going to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate. Many different ways to give digitally there. You could do it through the mail, which many people do. You can make a check payable to Heritage Christian Ministries Association and send it to 246 Stuart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H 3C8, and your gift is tax deductible. All right, Dad, we are out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.